Hello and welcome to the class. My name is Daniel, and today we're going to be looking at vocabulary and grammar, the IELTS speaking. If you have a question after the class, you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. This is the second of two classes and will last just over 20 minutes. First, we're going to talk about lexical resource, and then we're going to look at some tips for you to improve this. So by the end of the class, you'll be more familiar with how this affects your speaking score in the exam. During the class, you'll be asked to answer some questions. These will appear below the video. I'll tell you when you need to answer them, and I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds for each one. So let's have a look at what lexical resource is. Well, basically, it is vocabulary. Lexical resource just means vocabulary. We're going to look exactly, though, at what your marks are. So here is the marking criteria that the examiner will see or will use when they're assessing your speaking. Now, we can see that it goes from band 9, and here it goes to 6. Actually, it goes from 9 down to 0. 0 is the lowest mark, 9 is the highest mark you can get in the exam. We're just going to focus on 9 to 6 here. Let's look at some of the most important features here. Well, as you can see, it talks about vocabulary. Vocabulary resource, vocabulary resource. And depending on your range, so the amount of different vocabulary you use, you can get higher or lower mark. So you can see here it says has a wide enough vocabulary to discuss topics. Whereas here it says you use vocabulary with full flexibility in all topics. So there's a bit of a difference from 9 to 6 there. Another thing that it talks about here is less common vocabulary and idiomatic vocabulary. Again, you can see idiomatic language, less common and idiomatic vocabulary. Now, we're going to look at what this means in the coming slides. Another thing as well that it talks about is making your meaning clear. So being able to express yourself clearly using the correct words for the topic you're talking about. And obviously, the better you can do that, the higher a mark you're going to get. And then another thing that comes up here is paraphrasing. So we can see here. So it says paraphrasing successfully, whereas here it says use this paraphrase effectively as required. We're going to look exactly what paraphrasing is in the coming slides. So let's just summarize those points. So less common vocabulary is important. We need to be able to make our meaning clear using the correct vocabulary to do that. And we want to be able to paraphrase well. We're going to cover those now. So let's have a look at that lexical resource now. So what is less common vocabulary? Well, it's idiomatic vocabulary and phrases. We're going to look at this in a second. And it's less known collocations. Now, collocations are words that commonly go together. For example, with the noun party, you could say have a party. But you could also say throw a party. And not many students know the collocation throw a party. That is a less common piece of vocabulary. So if in the exam you use throw a party instead of have a party, you would get higher marks for that because it's less common vocabulary. Now, what is idiomatic vocabulary? Well, idiomatic vocabulary is words or phrases that a native or very high-level speaker would use. It often has a meaning that is different from the usual meaning of the words. We're going to see some examples of that in a moment. So let's have a look at what we mean by less common vocabulary. Well, here we can see 5 sentences that might be used, but these all contain quite common vocabulary. For example, everyone knows the word enjoyed. It's a very common word. Everyone knows very happy. Everyone knows busy. Earn enough money. Okay, it's quite a nice collocation. And to survive, but maybe there's another way we can say that. And then go swimming. So these are all phrases that most people at a low level will know. And we don't really want to use them if we can avoid it, if we can have some vocabulary that we can improve on them. So what I'd like you to do is have a look at these phrases and see if you can match them to the ones on the left. And have a look at the question below the video to try to do that. I'm going to give you 10 to 15 seconds. Okay, so well, this first one, I enjoyed this a lot. Well, you could say I had a whale of a time. So enjoyed a lot and had a whale of a time, they have the same meaning. I felt very happy. So very happy, I was absolutely over the moon. That means very happy. Again, this is less common vocabulary. Not many people know these phrases. I'm very busy at work. I'm completely snowed under. So that means busy at work. It's hard to earn enough money to survive. Hard, okay, we've used here tricky. And then earn enough money to survive. There's the phrase make ends meet. Now, this is quite idiomatic vocabulary because ends of what does it mean? So this phrase is a very high level phrase. And if you could use it instead of saying it's hard to earn enough money to survive, you'd get much higher marks in the vocabulary section. I sometimes go swimming in the sea. I go for a dip, okay? Go for a dip means a swim in the sea. And sometimes we've used this phrase every now and again. So there's always vocabulary that you could use, which is a higher level than these simple ones on the left side. So when should you use them? Well, only when you feel comfortable. There's no point trying to use them if you've only used them once or you don't use them regularly, because what you'll do is it will sound very unnatural when you try to use them, or you might make a mistake when you're using them and you'll lose marks for maybe grammar or for accuracy or something like that. So just when you're comfortable. But that means you should learn them. You should find some new phrases, nice phrases, keep improving your vocabulary and trying to use them just in your normal speaking. And then when you take the exam, hopefully you'll be able to use them in a natural way. So as I just mentioned there, they need to sound natural. If they don't, if they sound robotic or like you've just memorized something and you're using it in this situation, you won't get such high marks for them. Now let's look at that other point that came up in the marking criteria, which is paraphrasing. So what is paraphrasing? Well, paraphrasing is using synonyms and word families, and we're going to see how, and we're going to look at what those two are now. So what is a synonym? Well, a synonym is a word that has the same meaning as another word. For example, fantastic and amazing. They both mean very good. So they are synonyms. Now, what I'd like you to do is to match up these synonyms on the left with the ones on the right. And if you look at the question below the video and try to do that, I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds. Okay, well, we've got here first the word think, and we can match think to the word believe. They have the same meaning. Then my town can match to the place where I live or the place I live. They are synonyms. We got here popular with or famous for. They're also synonyms. And then we've got in the summer and when it's hot. They are synonyms as well. So they have the same meaning. Now let's look at what a word family is. A word family is a group of words that are related, but only their word type or class is different. What I mean by word type or class is if it's a verb or if it's a noun or if it's an adjective. Well, let's have a bit of practice. So here is a word family for the word tourist. And what I'd like you to do is try to complete it with the missing words. And if you look at the question below the video and try to answer that. Okay, let's have a look now together. So here is the completed word family. So we see tourist is a noun for the person. We can change it to a verb here, which is tour. That's the verb. Then the noun, the general noun, is tourism. There's two adjectives, one of them formal, which is touristic, and then another one which is more informal, which lots of people use when they're speaking, which is touristy. So I think touristy is a bit more common than touristic, particularly in speaking. So this is what we mean by a word family. They're not the same word, but they are related, and just their word type or word class is different. So let's come back to what paraphrasing is then. Well, paraphrasing is using synonyms that we just looked at and word families that we just looked at to change the words in a sentence so that it looks different but has the same meaning. So where you're taking one sentence, you're changing the words, but you are not changing the meaning. That's what we mean by paraphrasing. Here is an example. So you say, I think my town is popular with tourists when it's hot. So we've seen some of these words before. We saw, I think, my town, we saw popular with and tourists, and we saw when it's hot. Now, we can paraphrase this, and we could say, I believe the place I live is famous for tourism in the summer. Okay, so we've got think, we've changed to believe. My town, we've changed to the place I live. Popular with, famous for. Tourists, we've not used a synonym, but we've changed the word family. We've changed it from tourist to tourism, and when it's hot and in the summer are synonyms. So that is what we mean by paraphrasing. We're changing some of the words, or changing most of the words, but we're not changing the meaning. Now have a little look at these example conversations so we can see how someone might use paraphrasing in the speaking exam. So the examiner says, do you think that adverts lie to us to sell us things? And the student says, I think that some marketing can give a truthful message, but the ultimate aim is to get our money. Now, the student has paraphrased some of this. So we've got adverts. The student has used the word marketing. Now, that is basically a synonym of adverts. Here we've got lie, and here say give a truthful message. So truthful is the opposite meaning, which is a kind of paraphrasing where you give it's called the antonym, the word with the opposite meaning. But the ultimate aim is to get our money. So sell us things and get our money. These are paraphrased, again, synonyms. So you can see how the student has taken the question and just changed some of the words to give their answer. And this is a really good thing to show in the speaking exam. So practicing with this can really help. Let's see another example. The examiner says, can you know a lot about a person's character from their clothes? The student says, I'm not sure that the way someone dresses really tells you much about their personality. Okay, so let's look again. We've got a person's character, their personality. We've got these are synonyms again. From their clothes, the way someone dresses and from their clothes are synonyms. And know a lot, tell you much are also synonyms. So again, the student is doing a very good job of paraphrasing the question, and they're going to get high marks by showing that they can do this. It's not just in exams that we do this. Native speakers do it all the time. When someone asks you a question, often you'll just change a lot of the words and give your answer. So paraphrasing is a really useful skill. Let's see one more example. Who should be responsible for looking after people without homes? And the student says, I feel it is the government's responsibility to take care of the homeless. So here we've got responsible, which is an adjective. And you can see here that the student has changed it to responsibility, which is a noun. So that is paraphrasing. It's not using a synonym, but it's using a word family, as we looked at before. We've got looking after and take care of. So those are synonyms. And then people without homes and the homeless, again, are synonyms, and homes and homeless. So that would be part of a word family as well. So here is another great example of how paraphrasing can be used in the exam. So it's a skill you really want to try to develop and get better at. It's not just in the speaking, you use it in all of the IELTS. It's probably one of the most important things you can learn to do. But remember, if you have a question, you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. Now remember to complete the online training and do the extra practice activities online. Thank you very much for joining the class. We'll see you again. Goodbye.